Hi everyone, this is Todd from One Shot API. This tutorial is going to show you how to run your own dollar cost averaging workflow in n8n that'll let you swap from an input token like USDC to an output token like Coinbase Bitcoin using the Uniswap V3 protocol. And importantly, this is a fully non-custodial dollar cost averaging workflow. It uses MetaMask's Delegation toolkit. We have integrated the delegation framework into the One Shot API platform, so you can use One Shot API to relay transactions from your self-custodied browser wallets and mobile apps. You can now relay transactions on behalf of users in workflows and dApps built on top of One Shot API. So to get started, before we set up our workflow, we do need to make sure that we have upgraded our MetaMask account to a smart wallet. So if you click on your account and then click the hamburger menu here, account details, there's a section here called Enable Smart Contract Account. Be sure you have toggled on base mainnet. This will work on any of these networks, but we're going to stick to base mainnet for this tutorial to keep it simple. And then once you've done that, if we come back to n8n, if you go to the One Shot API creator page and then click the automate token purchases workflow, hit use for free, and then copy the JSON template here. Then if you open n8n and create a new workflow and paste it, you'll see a workflow that looks like this. It's fairly simple, linear workflow. Let's walk through a few things though to set it up. It's highly customizable, so there are a few aspects for configuration. The first one is the schedule, like how often do you want to trigger this workflow, which means how often do you want to make dollar cost averaging purchases. So this is in minutes. I'm going to set it to 2 for the tutorial, but you could have this fire every day or every week, whatever makes sense for you. And the cool thing is about running your own dollar cost averaging bot is it's going to be much cheaper than using something from like a centralized exchange, which charges you a pretty high fee every time you purchase on a regular schedule with them. With this workflow, you're only paying the Uniswap fee, which is 500 basis points, so that's pretty nice. So 2 minutes there. The swap configs, there's a lot of things you can customize here if you want to change it. Most of this stuff you can leave as it is, but there are 2 quantities you're going to want to change. The first one is the amount to dollar cost average every purchase period. So I have it set to 250,000 right now, which this is referring to the token N, which is set up to be USDC on base, which has 6 decimals. So 250,000 is actually 25 cents in USDC. And then the second one is the delegator address. So that's you. That's your MetaMask address. So if you come back to MetaMask and click copy, be sure to paste that here. So now this workflow, when it runs through One Shot, these transactions will execute as if they were your self-custodied account. Now, if you want to change the network or you want to change the tokens, these addresses here, you'll have to change them. And if you change the tokens, be sure to change these decimals, because this will affect how the prices are calculated and displayed to you. The fee, probably don't need to change that. Most pools in Uniswap have a fee of 500 basis points. But this right here, this is your time-weighted averaging window. So I have it set to 2 minutes. If you want to make it smaller or bigger, you can play with that. But this is all your configs. At this point, we need to authenticate the workflow against our One Shot API account. So if you click on one of these nodes, this credential to connect with, edit that, and you need a client ID. You need a client ID and a client secret. So open One Shot API, log in or create a new account if you don't have one already. Come to the API keys tab, create a new API key, give it a name, and then get that key and secret, paste it here. The business ID comes from the top of the portal here. Copy that business ID, paste it here, and save. And then you are authenticated against your One Shot API account. Now, before we continue, now that we've got the API key input, we're using the MetaMask delegation framework. So OneShot API will relay transactions on our behalf so that we don't have to be online every time we want this workflow to make a purchase for us. So to do that, back in OneShot API, we need to click on the Wallets tab, and we need to create a new wallet. So we're creating a server wallet in OneShot API. Be sure to set it on the base network and give it a name and description and create it. You can see I've already created one, and I've funded it with about $17 worth of base ETH. $17 worth of base ETH will fund thousands of transactions on the base network, so you really don't need very much. And that's the only thing you need to deposit in this server wallet, just a little bit of base ETH in order to fund the relayed transactions. So once I've got that, if I come back to my workflow, there's some notes here for you that you can just follow as is. We need to import 4 smart contracts that our workflow is going to interact with. Click on each one of these and import their functions. So I'll do a few of them with you. Hit this, click create contract method for all functions, import all of them, and then just do this for each one of these smart contracts. Okay, once you've imported the methods for those smart contracts, if you click on My Smart Contracts over here and filter on the base network, you'll see them show up here. So here's your swap router and its methods. Here's the quoter contract and its methods, and so on. So we're now going to point our workflow nodes at these methods. So here's your instructions for which ones to point at. So for the first node, fetch pool, this should point at the observe method on the pool. So if we click this and search for observe, here's the base observe method on our pool contract. Hit save. The second one is get swap quote. And for the get swap quote, we want to point it at the quote exact input single on the quoter contract. This one right here. Hit save. Third, we need to import the approve function for USDC on this node. So type in approve, and we'll select the approve for base USDC. Next, we import the exact input single function on the swap router v2 contract. So we type in exact input single right here, import, save. And then the last one here, we want to be able to fetch the balance of our wallet after each purchase so that we can notify ourselves how much funds we have left. So point it at the balance of your token in, which is USDC. So balance of, right there, balance of USDC, and hit save. And at that point, the blockchain components are all set up. The last part, which if you don't want to mess with it, you can actually delete it, but I recommend setting it up because it'll give you some feedback, is I have these 2 Telegram nodes which will notify you if a swap fails and also notify you when it succeeds with a message about the transaction hash and how much you purchased and other good pieces of data. It'll send it straight to you on Telegram. So to do this, you're going to need to create a Telegram bot. So if you come to Telegram and open the botfather, open the botfather bot, and you would type in, new bot, hit create a new bot, follow those instructions. Once you've created a new bot and you click on it, you need to grab its API token. Keep that token safe. I'm going to reset mine after this tutorial. But grab that token from your new Telegram bot, and this is what you're going to create a credential with. Paste that bot token here and hit save. Then the next thing you need is the chat ID. So this is the chat ID between you and the bot that you just created. So getting that chat ID is kind of tricky. You can't grab it directly from Telegram, and I wish n8n had an easier way for you to get this, but the best trick I've found is to temporarily add a new trigger node from Telegram and have it trigger on a new message. So on message here, right, and then hit execute, and then your bot, just give it a message, say hello, and that should trigger that node in n8n. And then see here, chat ID, that number right there, that is your chat ID. So copy that, delete the temporary trigger, you don't need it anymore, but then paste that chat ID in both of your Telegram nodes. And then at that point, we have configured everything in our workflow. Now there's one last step. Remember, we are using the Delegation toolkit. We need to be able to give permission for OneShot API to run transactions as our MetaMask account. So back in OneShot, come to Wallets, then click on your base wallet that you provisioned just a couple of minutes ago, and connect your wallet to the page, and you'll see two buttons, an approve button and an add delegation button. So click add delegation, and I'm going to set the time period that I want this to be valid for. I'm going to set it to be a week. You can set it to be whatever you want. And then I need to give permission to the swap router O2 contract, and I also need to give it to USDC. So this is going to give OneShot API the permission to execute the functions on these two contracts on our behalf. So if I hit create delegation, it will pop open a signature window, confirm it, and then you can see here's the delegation that I just created. And if you click on the information, there's the two contracts that I just approved. Now at this point, I can actually start my DCA workflow, but let's see it in action. So I'm going to trigger this workflow. It's going to perform a swap for us, and then we should get a message in Telegram once it completes. Okay, so it finished. And if we check Telegram, here is our message. So you can see we swapped 250,000 USDC for our output token. So we're swapping USDC for Coinbase BTC. So we're going to get a very tiny amount of Bitcoin for 25 cents. And then it'll also tell us the time weighted average price we bought it at. This is USDC divided by, BTC. That's why the price looks weird. If you inverse it, you'd see the price of BTC and USDC. And here's your transaction hash. So you could use that transaction hash to go look up the transaction on the block scanner. And we can actually do that if we come back into OneShot API and click on our transaction history. Here is the approved transaction, and here is the exact input single transaction. And to show you what it looks like when you run a delegated transaction in MetaMask, if you click on the logs of your function, you'll see a redeemed delegation event. So this is how you know that the transaction was relayed through the MetaMask Delegation Manager singleton contract. You'll see stuff like this. And then here's your approval. So this sent a message to your EOA, and then your EOA's address performed the tasks that was asked to be performed, which in this case was an approval. And if you look at the swap itself, here's the swap. And again, here's your redeem delegation event, and then swap and the transfers. And importantly, the gas fees for this on base, if you look at how much the gas was, we're talking transaction fee, 1/10 of a penny. So for $17, that's thousands of transactions. So at this point, I've got my workflow configured. I have my delegations created in One-Shot API. I can change this to work on different chains, use different tokens. But once I've got it dialed in for what I want, if I come back to this page and activate it, this will now trigger the run every time period, which in this case for me is going to be every 2 minutes. I'm going to be buying 25 cents. And then you can see your balance going down over time, and you'll see messages show up in your Telegram between you and your DCA bot. So here you see that the swap just triggered, and I got a real-time message in Telegram. Note that you can come into n8n, click on your workflow while it's active. If you click on executions, you can see a history of your executions here. And if you click on one of them, you can investigate the parameters that, went downstream in the workflow. So, I can see here any piece of data that was generated in my workflow over time. Last thing I want to close with is that this was kind of a complicated configuration to get this running, but there's a lot of powerful components that you can use for your own workflows, particularly these two nodes right here, which use Uniswap as a price and liquidity oracle. So if you wanted to build more sophisticated trading algorithms inside of n8n, you could actually use this as a starting point. So this block shows you how to grab liquidity and price observations from a pool, shows you how to get quote estimates from the Uniswap quoter, and then this block right here, you can copy and paste it into your own workflows for converting those internal accounting representations into human readable prices and liquidity, so you can do trading rather than just dollar cost averaging. So give this a shot. If you have questions, ask us on our Telegram channel, and watch out for other workflows with the MetaMask delegation framework coming in the future. Thank you.